Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'm your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. So I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. There is so much to talk about this morning, and let's begin with U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro. That's right, she was Donald Trump's loyalist. She's the one who he believed in. There was even speculation that he would put her on the United States Supreme Court. But guess what? There is an impasse. There is a problem, because it was Pirro who brought the charges about vandalism in the reflecting pool at Washington, D.C.'s Lincoln Memorial. There was a belief the president promulgated that there was vandalism, and indeed, an Olympic star was charged. But it turns out, there was no vandalism. It turns out Donald Trump's friend, the contractor who was doing the repairs on the reflecting pool, well, he messed up, and now the charges have been dropped. Donald Trump is furious, and although she was a close ally, there is now speculation that Pirro may be removed. And why? Because if you cross Donald Trump, if he makes a statement, it must be true, and everyone has to fall in line. And of course, what we will wait for today and perhaps tomorrow, perhaps to the end of the week, is what the president will do about Jeanine Pirro. Will he keep her or will he fire her? And what does it mean if there is no evidence of vandalism? What if the conclusion is correct, that it was the contractor's fault? What then will be the penalty? And who will pay the price? But the important element here is that for Donald Trump, being wrong is not an option. And do you understand, if you have a president of the United States of America who believes that, we've got a problem. And there is another major issue which needs to be confronted. It turns out that two Republican senators who threatened to block acting Attorney General Todd Blanche's confirmation to lead the Justice Department said yesterday that they will support the nomination. Why? Because John Cornyn of Texas and Tom Tillis of North Carolina have decided that the pledge made by the new theoretical Attorney General not to enforce what Donald Trump has demanded, immunity from prosecution for himself and his family, and even more important, the idea that that $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund will be dropped. The fact that they have now agreed to that doesn't mean, and I want to emphasize this emphatically, does not mean that it's dead. No. You see, it is Donald Trump's initiative. He has not signed off on this. But there's more. Should Todd Blanche be confirmed, I must tell you, the idea to create a fund to compensate allies of President Donald Trump is absurd. And thank God, the man who evidently will be confirmed by the Senate before the end of the week or early next week, he is saying no. But it's not his choice, ladies and gentlemen. It is the choice of the President of the United States of America. And he doesn't like to be wrong. And he wants that protection. And he is going to do everything he can to ensure that he has that protection. So we're going to watch carefully what happens now on that level. And there is more. It comes to foreign policy. The President of the United States has said he is prepared to launch an attack more devastating than anything launched during World War II against Iran. But here's the problem. The problem is that our allies in the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia, are saying no, don't do it. And so Donald Trump has had to postpone it. So he says negotiations with Iran are continuing. The Iranians say no. No, there are no negotiations. There is no forward motion at all. Who do you believe? Donald Trump or the Iranians? And I ask the question bluntly, emphatically, because that's the issue. Will there be another major war in the Middle East? And now we have Lebanon again, because the Trump administration is saying, oh, yes, we've resolved the issue. All we had to do was get the Lebanese government to agree. But Hezbollah, the people who are really waging the war against Israel, Lebanon has never been part of that in any effective fashion. Hezbollah says no, they won't accept it. And what does that mean? Oh, of course, I forgot the Board of Peace, Donald Trump's creation, in order to implement all of his effective initiatives in the Middle East. Well, it turns out the Board of Peace has no real substantive role to play. They have no initiative to offer. And indeed, it remains a theoretical question about whether or not anything can be done with Iran as long as the mullahs are in control. So, will there be a devastating attack? And let's point something else out, purely domestic, and that has to do with the price of oil. We know that Donald Trump is very concerned about the price of oil. He has announced that that price is going to drop. Well, I haven't seen it, by the way. Been to a gas station lately? You're not seeing a drop in price. But what does happen is when Donald Trump suggests that there is a chance for some deal, then all of a sudden the price of a barrel of oil drops. Doesn't drop very far, but it drops. What happens if Donald Trump's initiatives with Iran fail? And let me point out that even as Donald Trump is talking about initiatives with Iran, Iran is saying there are no initiatives, there are no talks. You tell me, who do you believe? Do you believe the President of the United States, or do you believe the Iranians? And if there is a devastating attack against Iran, now opposed by Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and our allies in the Gulf states, what will that mean for Donald Trump's policies? There is no doubt that on a variety of fronts, Donald Trump is now facing opposition. And you can see the failure of his policy. And by the way, where is Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor to the President? And where is Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the two supposed brilliant negotiators that Donald Trump is using? Have you heard from them? Have you seen them? Do you know what they're doing? And the answer, my friends, is no. Because everything is centralized in the Oval Office, and the erratic behavior of Donald Trump is clear. Whether it has to do with an attorney who does not follow his instructions, whether it has to do with an acting attorney general who he wants to be attorney general, who will make certain claims which he, the president, will not back up. And then you have the rebellion among members of the Senate and House who are looking, frankly, to save their own political skins. They want to be reelected. And in the case of two key individuals that we have talked about, Cornyn of Texas is one, and Tom Tillis of North Carolina, they're caving on the question of this attorney general. Well, what does it mean? Remember, both of them are out. They are not candidates for re-election. And so Cornyn and Tillis had refused to back Blanche's bid to be permanently Attorney General of the United States, and the deal to rescind the $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund, which was proposed to settle Trump's lawsuit against the IRS. Remember, all of that is now in limbo, except that in the end, it doesn't matter what anyone says if the acting Attorney General of the United States, Todd Blanche, who is the president's personal lawyer on a number of levels, were to be confirmed as Attorney General. The corruption in this administration is so complete that it is almost beyond comprehension. Now I want to suggest the most important single thing to you. Donald Trump may or may not be held accountable, but in the end, the Republican Party will be held accountable. Republicans in the House and Senate who have backed the president to the hilt, they must be held accountable. And that, my friends, is the real question. Will they be held accountable by the electorate in November? And remember, this president is still trying to fiddle with how the results are tabulated in November. And that, my friends, should concern everyone. There is no doubt that there is now a tension between Donald Trump and the Republican Party. But now let's leave the Republicans and go to the Democrats. There are a number of key races which will be dealt with tonight because of the primaries. Who will win, the mainline Democrats or the so-called progressives? This is going to be particularly true in the state of Ohio, where there is a major battle taking place, and it, of course, is even more true in Michigan. Because there, the battle for who will win the nomination by the Democratic Party for the United States Senate is clear. And this battle will determine, in large measure, whether or not the Republicans can keep control of the United States Senate in January. There is so much at stake. But what bothers me the most, without going into all the details about the primaries, which we will get into, I'm sure, as the results roll in tonight, the thing that really concerns me is that you have two major political parties adrift. We have a two-party system in this country. And if the Republican Party is now the party of Donald Trump, as his son, Donald Trump Jr., has suggested, then the Republicans have a problem, because Donald Trump's popularity is sinking and sinking fast. And what about the Democrats? If there is a struggle between the so-called mainstream Democrats and the progressives, who will win? And we know that that is going to be a big battle. Let me point out that among the progressives, Israel is a major issue, and there seems to be now a progressive response saying it's time to cut aid to Israel. The mainstream Democrats tend to hold the traditional view that Israel is an ally of the United States and deserves and needs our full support. By the way, that doesn't mean the support is unconditional. It means that when America disagrees with an Israeli policy, they have the perfect right to express it. But what it does mean is that the progressives are in a battle with the mainstream Democrats for the soul of the Democratic Party. What do you do if the Democrats turn to the progressives? What happens if they win? And what happens if Trump continues to dominate the Republican Party? There will then be an impasse. And that, my friends, should bother us all, because the strength of America, in large measure, is a two-party system which functions. I'm pointing this out now because this will be the speculation tonight and tomorrow. It will certainly be what we address in the next few days, depending upon the outcome of the election. Let's also point out that Donald Trump is going to be in California today. He is appearing in Los Angeles, and the tension between Donald Trump and Republican and Democratic voters here in California is real. I will address this question on the Voice of San Francisco podcast, which I also do on a daily basis. It is important to note that Steve Hilton, the Republican candidate for governor of California, has distanced himself from Donald Trump. But what does it mean in terms of the actual election? In short, my friends, whether we look at the selection of a new attorney general, the question of the survival of a U.S. Attorney Perot, whether we deal with Iran and the speculation about what will happen with Iran, whether we deal with the elections that are taking place tonight, the one thing that is consistent and clear is that Donald Trump is at the fulcrum of all of this. He is the critical pivot in all of this. And we now will have to wait and see how that issue is addressed. And the voters will have their say. This is something we will be watching carefully. It has to do with the future of our politics in the United States of America. All right. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, click any of the links in the show notes to connect with me on social media. And most important of all, you can ask me questions, and I will try to provide you answers. Remember, we did it yesterday because we had a backlog, but Friday we will begin again with your questions and answers. Remember to share this episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. This show has been getting so much positive attention that we're excited to bring on increasing advertising support. You'll be hearing more about that in the days ahead. Of course, this helps us to create more opportunities for Around the Political World with John Rothman, and we are happy to do it. I want to say a big thank you to Gogo Zoger for the wonderful job that she does each and every day. And to all of you, I will see you tomorrow, right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.